Devina, it's been a while that we've spoken, but I'm glad that we're talking today. And since it's been a while that we've spoken to you, I would love to know whether 2026 brings out Devina Mehra as being optimistic, considering that 2025 Indian markets have hardly performed, or you're still a bit skeptical despite the trade deals, despite maybe the anti-AI trade starting to play out and whatnot?
So even before the trade deal, or for that matter, the budget, my view was that 2026 may well be, at least in probability terms, better than 2025. And the simple reason being that for the first time on television, on digital media, I saw all let us say people from my industry enumerating the risks in the market. Normally everybody is only selling the quote-unquote India growth story. And sentiment is a contraindicator, not my opinion. That's data in every research study in every market in the world, not just India and the US, but even Portugal, Brazil, across the globe, wherever the study has been done, it's the same, that when there is fear, there's anxiety, there's uncertainty, when you hear questions like, should I stop my SIP? Should I get out of the market? The next period returns are above normal in terms of probability. And it is when you have very, very buoyant sentiment, as was the case the first 8-9 months of 2024, when people thought 30% compounding was there for the taking. I mean, I actually had family officers telling me this, that I don't have unrealistic expectations. I'll be happy with 30% compounding. I said, that is an unrealistic expectation. But I had my RMs telling me that, people are saying that आपकी मैडम सुनने में तो अच्छा लगता है, but वो तो मदर टेरेसा की तरह बात करती है. आप क्यों रिस्क की बात कर रहे हैं when everybody wants small cap scheme and make some money? People said, I want to take high risk and get high returns. I said, only thing certain with high risk is high risk of losses. Nobody is guaranteeing the high returns. But at that time, nobody wants to listen to that. And that's why that whole somewhat you got zero returns. And actually 2025, the indexes don't even capture the pain in the market, because while, for instance, the BSE 500 was up, the median stock was down. 57% of the stocks were down. 40% were down more than 10%. Now the figure is even worse with a very bad January. January, India was the worst performing market in the world. Among the major 41, 42 indexes, we were right at the bottom. And the sad part was that the top 5 were all emerging markets. So this has been a boom time for emerging markets, and still we have not performed. But as I said, just because the sentiment is bad, maybe that is the good news. And that's been my view. That I never give a 1 year, never have given a 1 year index projection either in January or the beginning of the new Samvat. But certainly, I would say that things don't look quite so bad. My recommendation has been A, never have 100% in equity. B, that whatever is your equity allocation, certainly not time to sit it out. You should be invested. Maybe not in the same old stocks that you have in your DP, but you should be invested.
Wow. So that's Devina, what I love about Devina is you always tell it how it is. It's unvarnished. So when Devina is saying that things are not so bad, that means you can probably expect a very positive turn.
Devina, let's nail it down then, right? You look at quadrants, you look at markets within quadrants, and you look at sectors within quadrants as well, right? Where is it that if Devina Mehra is slightly more optimistic than she was in 2025, that she finds favor? What themes, real commodities, tech, what is it that you like? Within India, by the way, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, I don't believe in narratives and stories. I don't believe in high conviction, because high conviction is nothing but getting married to a story. So we always look at data, and we look at data afresh every quarter, because data changes. And just to go back to some of the conversation that went on in terms of Q3 earnings, the interesting thing was, if you look at my interviews last few months, I had been saying that I expect an uptick in earnings in Q3, which didn't quite come through. And part of the reason which has been missed out, which I had posted on, was the new labor code. that had a significant impact on earnings, obviously in BFSI and IT, but pretty much across the board, so much so, I think I looked at it when about 50% of the Nifty 100 earnings had come out, and the PBT on the reported PBT had not even gone up 1%, but if you add back the NLC related provisions, it was about 8.5–9% increase. So, some of it got hidden in this whole, the labor code implementation, especially for companies. But it was not just BFSI and IT, even, Indigo and L&T and all that had significant number provisions there. In terms of, again, I mean, we are in the process of a rebalance, so this may not hold 6 months later. But last 2 years, we have been overweight auto components and slowly auto also, which did well last 2 years. Pharma and healthcare, we've been overweight, which Jake's mentioned, did well in 2024. 2025, you can say, was a consolidation phase, but we still remain positive there. 25, we've added banks. Normally, we are a nervous investor in banks, so we're still not overweight banks, but we hold more than we normally do. So first half of 25 was PSU banks. Later on, it was some of the non-PSUs also. What else? So more FMCG, we slowly became overweight. I mean, more companies came on our systems. Others are bottom-up picks. They're capital goods, there's chemicals. IT would be probably market weight. So that would be broadly where we are. But also, I mean, FIIs are being discussed so much. I think I must have told you this also sometime or the other, that we all ask, will the FIIs come back? And inherent in that is an assumption that when FIIs come in, the market goes up. When FIIs go out, the market goes down. But I go back to my school days, and my maths teacher would always say that from this step to next step, is it really implied, or are you making a leap of faith or leap of logic?
But 2025 showed that, right?
No, but if you plot from over a longer term, every month, the FII flows and the market movement, you'll find there is no correlation, let alone causality, there's no correlation. And I speak as one who started this business because the FIIs came in.
Yeah.
So I've been there right from the beginning. And even at a broader level, in 94 is when the FII money started coming in. There was no Indian mutual fund to speak of. There was no great retail investment. So you would have said that this great slew of money which didn't exist is coming. It would really drive up the market. 94 to 2003, only 9-year period in the Sensex history with net zero returns.
Wow.
So that
Are
is
you
the data. I mean, rest are stories.
Are you making the point that we don't really need FPIs in Indian markets?
I'm saying I track FII and FDI from a balance of payment perspective, but not from a market direction perspective. I think we need lots more FDI. We've been doing pretty poorly on FDI, and the net FDI has been pretty poor.
So in that case, how do you determine, and I'll open up this question, the largest pain point for Indian markets? There was a time when people used to say Indian markets are disassociated with what's happening in the economy. Economy was weak, Indian markets were still up. Maybe the reverse is happening now. Your macro indicators are fine, your high frequency indicators are fine, you have FDI coming in, you are the fastest growing economy in the world, you're cracking trade deals left, right and center, but markets have not responded.
I mean, are you asking me? Okay, so, I mean, markets will frustrate you. They will not do what you want them to do. I mean, the biggest outlier example I give is China. China's market made a high in 2007. Its GDP went up 7 times, and that high was not taken out till about a year ago. So it can be as big a disconnect as that. But I don't think, we've done that badly that we will never come out of it, or because in terms of returns also, we are not above the trend line. So which is why I'm saying that this is a time to remain invested, because if you look at the long-term trajectory of returns from Indian markets, the 1980s decade was a 21% compounding. 100 rupees became 700 rupees in a decade. Next decade was 14%, then 17%, and then 8.5%. The 10 to 20, you got, 100 rupees became only 230 rupees, which you would have got in fixed deposits. So that's why you had room for a run, and we are still not above the overall long-term trend line, which is why I'm saying I don't see the risk of a big crash, which is the point that you remain invested. You don't know when the up move comes. chance, because in 40 years, if you miss out 10 best days, you give up 2/3 of your returns. If you miss out 30 best days, you give up 90% of your return. So unless you see a big crash coming, most of the time it makes sense to remain invested. And the big moves come. I mean, one move, of course, came recently also, but most of the time the big moves come when there is fear, despondency, anxiety. They don't come in a mad bull run. The only time those sharp moves came in a mad bull run was the Harshad Mehta Teji, which was a rigged market. Otherwise, it's never happened that you have one-day moves which are of that kind of size. Look at some of the IPOs that have come now, or for that matter, see, IPO frenzies come and go, and they have been there as long as stock exchanges have been there. I mean, there's 400 IPOs on the Paris Stock Exchange, I think in 1881, where at the roadside food fella was giving you prospectuses. In India also, we've seen many times, 2021 being a good example, as when all these so-called new age IPOs came. And at that time itself, people were saying, you know, value it on 15 years out earnings. The fact is that for most of them, the peak financials were just before the IPO, which is true of far too many IPOs. And the other concern, if you look at 2025, is the quantum of offer for sale in the entire IPO. So it is the retail investor who's giving an exit, not just to the promoter, to the first round investor, second round investors. And most of the time, the IPO valuation is 2, 3, 4 times, sometimes 8 times the last fundraise. So these are not, you know, undervalued as a group. I mean, they would be the odd one. And there is no other way to value an IPO compared to a listed stock. There's only one way to value a stock. And too many people get in thinking this is a lottery game, and which shows in the SEBI statistics also that not the funds, but of the individuals who get an allotment, if it lists at a premium, most of them flip out within 2 weeks. That's the data. So they are not even making an attempt to value or buy a company. They think they are participating in a lottery, and that's never a good thing. So that's never a good thing. I mean, you have to be cautious. And offer for sale, in theory, is not bad if the company doesn't require any more money. But if you are doing a 60% offer for sale and are back in the market within 8 months saying, I need more money, as was the case with Swiggy, that's a problem. I mean, you can call me old-fashioned. I started my life as a credit analyst. I do look at risks first. If you start as an equity analyst, everything is hunky-dory and every company has a great story. I have never met an entrepreneur who's not a great salesperson.